you know that they were at the bar like a couple hours ago or something. You're losing to them. It's like, dude, this sucks.
If I see something that my enemy is doing and I think it's not smart at all, let's fucking do it.
Sounds like you have to be ready for everything, though.
Welcome to the club.
Exactly.
Face
It's
it,
like,
right?
yeah, exactly. It's like, yeah, he
People don't
speaks.
talk, right?
So it's like basically, as long as he speaks, yeah, he's got good comms.
Who speaks face it?
I'm with Emma, flameZ, and YEKINDAR. We're on a balcony in Rio. It is going to be noisy. It's very windy. There'll be helicopters, and we're going to be talking about, well, the term that they've given me is entry fragging. But first of all, that's where I want to start, because I think entry fragging is essentially dead. I think it's space creators, map control players.
Openers.
Yeah, exactly. So let's start with you, shall we, Marix? What's your definition of the modern day, well, maybe not entry fragger, but the role that you play?
Well, I mean, I think many people would agree that the entry fraggers and, as you said, the space creators, openers, are a little bit different roles. In some places, they kind of collide with each other in terms of, like, for example, Inferno Banana. If you're kind of opener on Banana, but you also entry on B side most of the time, unless you have a hook scene team who's want to run in first, and you're gonna trade. Like, for example, how Nico played in G2 with Hooksy, where he was taking Banana control, but Hooksy was always running in first, right? So I think there is a big difference in terms of the role, and I think I agree with you in terms of that entry fragging is kind of dead. I think it's mostly divided between like 2 or sometimes even 3 players in the team who will always who recognize that they have to go first.
Sure. What about you, flameZ? You're an aggressive player on the T side. On the CT side, we'll talk about that later. You get to play a few more anchor spots, but on the T side, you get to go for the map control. So how do you define the role?
But I think in OG I used to be dedicated entry fragger. Like Marek said, it used to be like I used to be long on T side on Dust 2. Neofrag takes short, hop, come entry, and it's not I wouldn't say it's the most fun role, because you feel like in some sense you even get baited a bit, and it's easier for the other team because they can see your name on the map and they're like, okay, nobody's lurking there. And in Vitality I got the opportunity to be more of like a room taking position, and yeah, to be honest, right now it's just like you take space. You have a lot of like stuff already with the team, and sort of a lot of players who can entry and who can do that. I think I'm very lucky to have Zio in the team, because he also takes space many times. Like, he's entry fragging, taking space a lot, and he's a very good entry fragger in the sense of like he just knows how to kill people. But yeah, there is just entry fragger. I don't feel like it exists anymore. You're just a space taker, and in some teams and in some sites you're gonna entry, in some sites you're not gonna entry. I think it's very fair though that like you're not gonna be 24/7 entering, because if you go if you play like on T side on a different place, and then you go back to a side that, let's say mezZ is there and he took the space and is the closest, you're not gonna lose the timing by waiting for flames to go. So I think it's just a role that many people need to be able to do and be able to sacrifice in that sense. And yeah.
Sure. Do you agree?
I mean, they both said pretty much what an entry fragger is, but I think I agree with YEKINDAR that, and with you as well, like you said, there's no fun. But I think it's a bit fun, and it's 50-50. Like, it can be fun because you always move. Like, I would rather take this role instead of staying in the back, like flashing, because you have more action. But there's no fun because maybe if that teammate is missing flash, missing smoke, missing any detail maybe in the strat, who's gonna die?
Well, that's one thing, right? So people who are taking the space, traditionally are getting set up. Maybe you guys extinguish a molly as you're taking the space, but the flashes are there for you, the smokes. So, when you go out and you die because someone messed up the timing on something, and we as the casters and the people watching at home go, well, he just gave away another opening death. Like, how do you handle that?
No,
right?
but most of the time it's also like on stream it looks so awkward most of the times, and it's like people saying, what the fuck are you doing? But bro, it's like, even if you miss the flash or the smoke, maybe still you have to go because you need to create space, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Because then it's like insta GG.
I think if it's a strat, it's okay. A strat, it's just like, it happens. You don't really care. You need to enter either ways. Like, even the opers nowadays and the people who hold the site are so aware of which flashes are going to be popped. So I think it's okay if it's. I think it's annoying if you play a default and you want to take space and someone fails the flash there.
And that's the hard part about being like, for example, if you start a new team, you have new players, and they don't necessarily understand and feel like when do they need to offer a flash, or when because these milliseconds are like seconds where while somebody's lining up a flash, they matter a lot. Like Inferno Banana, for example, right? If you're gonna throw a half wall flash like 2 seconds later, they're gonna already
Yeah.
push you and you're gonna die. So it's like, especially in newer teams, I feel like entry fraggers or like like space creators or whatever you want to call them, like it's gonna be a struggle for them early, but eventually as the team is becoming like more consistent and there's more dry runs and everybody understands each other, I think that's where actually players kind of this role like strive. In a way.
Okay. So look, back in my day, I was an in-game leader, but I would always go quite aggressive, right? Which I see with in-game leaders sort of this day, like an Apex or an EliGE. Yeah, right. And they like to get stuck in and take space because for me, it makes it easier to call what's happening on the map, right? Because you're seeing it firsthand and you're downloading all the data, and then you don't have to worry about comming the info and it going through someone else and someone else making a decision. But modern CS is different. Like you guys all have your decision trees. So with the info that you guys give, first of all, does it need to be like how specific are we talking? Like for you guys when you're giving info, because you're going out into places, you need to focus on your crosshair. You're pushing through smokes and flashes. You're looking for fights, but your communication is probably the most important part of the space tank.
Yeah. I mean, usually there's like communicated signals that the IGL needs from you. So you kind of like discuss with him, or like on some maps it's easier to understand. Like for example, on Mirage they're fighting mid and you're taking mid control. Okay, we need to go out A, right? For example, but on some maps it's harder. For example, on Nuke you're saying like one guy's garage and one guy's secret, and you're communicating this information. And not always you are going to be able to say where is the gap.
Sure.
And that's for the IGL to kind of decide, or like to hear and to listen to you. Like, okay, there's one garage, one guy secret, ramp most likely is clear, for example, or whatever. And these signals you always, throughout the team, you kind of like discuss with the IGL. Since you're playing these impact positions where you get the most information, it's important to provide information for the IGL that he needs. And that is important for him. And that's what you learn. The more you play, the more you lose games, the more you win games. That's what you learn on like what information is actually needed for the team and what information is not.
Yeah, what's valuable. Okay. Yeah, I think for you, as an example, Apex used to be the classic definition of an entry fragger. Yeah. But he has you and Zywa within the team to kind of take that space. Does it ever feel like he knows how to set you up more because he used to play?
A lot of the time he sets me up like he would tell me like, he would say a call and he would know that I would be used good in that position, like go to a smoke and do that and that and that. And I like that role, right? And you don't want to send Zywa to do that because it might be a sacrifice and you want him for the late round. So a lot of times he does set me up. He tells me like, you can do that, like just like an example, like you could jump to it and just run. They never. I think it changed a lot. Like as YEKINDAR said, I think YEKINDAR has the benefit of experiencing being an IGL, so actually knows as well how it. And it's pretty tough, right, for an IGL to decide. Nowadays, it's like you see one guy secret, one garage, and there are two ramp. Like teams play like people know already like what's up with that. But I think a lot of the entry changed with the anti-stratting. That's like a guy with AUG shoots under heaven. That's ropes. That's right? Guys, go ramp now. And like
what about Kerrigan? He plays AUG as well sometimes.
But it's just like some stuff you see it, guys, they're doing this thing. And as an entry, it's very nice because you don't need to micromanage the whole map.
Sure.
I think I had one teammate, Nico, the Danish Nico. He used to have really good overview, like over the map, over the radar. He used to be absurdly good at just like understanding what the fuck is happening around him, even when he enters. But he was the only player with me that, like, even when he was, like, let's say I'm entering and someone is dead, a lot of times I would ask him to do my job, like to communicate, because it's way easier. Just if you enter in a strat sort of thing. And with Nico, even when he was alive, he used to like, it used to be like there used to be a nuke 4 people on, like 3 people on lobby, someone on silo, he's down outside, he sees something happen, guys go search out at now. They're like the A player is on main. He used to be very fast at like picking up everything.
Sure.
And I think this is like, for me, this is something that I need to find more consistency in that, because it's just. It's not a simple thing nowadays in CS. Like you might say it's also like being the courage enough to have said that, because you're responsible over the round now that you say that.
But I would say, right? So
wait, I think you need to get used to it because for example, for me, it's very easy to speak while shooting. Like like I see people cannot do this, but like I got used to it because I was doing, for example, maybe for too much, but.
Too much talking and shooting.
Too much talking and
Okay.
shooting, like
Need to concentrate on the crosshair more, yeah.
Sometimes for me, like sometimes it's a problem because maybe you cannot concentrate too much on shooting, and then maybe
Which
maybe you
talking?
whiff.
Info?
Info.
Yeah,
like-
so I'm not talking info. I'm talking like setting the thing up. Like, you know, if I'm
Oh, no.
I'm running Dust 2 and I need someone to like.
But I don't think anyone is doing this.
So in our in Vitality, like you want the dead people are responsible to.
Yes.
So and if 5 people are alive, then you're the responsible to be in charge of how the entry is gonna look like. And if you pop short on Inferno, then you like you want to set it up before, but sometimes you're like you see an Opera shooting on B, okay, fucking run, hey guys,
Yeah, well,
and then you're like.
But that's all
But
it all
this-
takes. You
this
just say,
reactions.
I'm running, and
Yes.
it's on their responsibility
Yeah,
to,
to like
fix
adapt.
the gaps and
Yeah.
adapt. And that's, I feel like, also is kind of hard for. Sometimes it's hard to play this role if your teammates do not recognize that. Like, if you're going, they have to go with
have
you.
to go,
Sure.
yes.
Do you have a code word for that? We used to have code words in Oz. Like if we got an entry kill and we wanted to pause and wait, we would call Euro. And if we wanted to just all in and just rush, we would call American.
Yeah, of course.
Right?
There's like macro words like freeze, for example, or whatever. Like
That's a pretty good one, I'd say,
hold
freeze,
or whatever. But more about these micro situations where you're taking like some space control and whatever. And sometimes you're a lot focused because like you as you said, the op shoots somewhere and then you start moving forward without kind of like.
Yeah.
And like sometimes you even forget, or maybe like forget to say like come with me or
The
whatever.
most
But
simple shit.
that's like the second guy's who's behind you. He sees you moving forward. He has to move
Yeah,
forward
the
with you.
responsibility. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, nowadays I think teams have protocols for this.
Yeah.
And then you don't even need to think. That's why probably for newer teams it's harder to do it. But if you have like, and let's say you play 2-3 tournaments, then you losing, like you said, you just get used to it. You get experience out of it, and then next time you're gonna do it.
Yeah, and that's where you can kind of be like focused on your game.
Yeah.
Like you don't need to think or like talk like how IEM is saying, for example, that he's used to like talking a lot or whatever, and he said maybe it's a bad thing. I think it can be a good thing, can be a bad thing both ways. But the more kind of things you have talked through, the easier it's gonna get for you to just concentrate in
On
game.
the fly, like.
Yeah, on
Sure.
the fly. Yeah.
So you guys all have had games in your career where you've like taken over, right? Like every kill that you go for, every fight that you go for, it's working, the timings are there. When you go back and you look at those games in review, they're normally the fun ones because you're looking at like all the highlights that you got. But is there anything that you identify with those games that put you into that type of a flow state? Was it your preparation of the enemy team? Was it just a good day? Like, I know that sounds ridiculous, but some days all the timings can go with you and some days all the timings can go against you in a position which, look, if I'm going out ancient and someone's smoking red and they're, smoking cave and the flashes are coming over, there's still a really good chance I get spammed through the red smoke and I'm dead. Like, and there's nothing I can do about that, right?
Yeah.
So like with how volatile it can be as a position, do you ever look at what goes your way for a good day?
I mean, of course, usually you kind of rewatch and you trying to understand, am I dying for like with a reason or I just got like lucky spammed or whatever, unlucky, like this guy flicked on me, like, or you lost a duel and whatever. These good games usually happen. I personally noticed that usually when these games where you're kind of taking over, your teammates are always in the right position to support you.
Okay.
So you're
These are probably the good comm games as well, where everything's flowing.
Yes,
Yeah, okay.
exactly. So it's like you're thinking about the thing, and you turn like to look where your teammates are, and
Perfect.
your teammate is in a perfect position to play off you or throw a perfect flash for you.
They just
And that-
offer it in the.
Exactly. Yeah, they're offering themselves, and you're just playing. Those are usually these games where like you're insane. But of course, sometimes you're winning more duels than you lose, right? And like you usually you can win all duels during the game, and those games are rare, of course, because like we're all playing against tier 1 teams.
Yeah,
who are,
everyone's a good player in the
exactly.
server. Yeah.
So but that happens a lot more rarely than your teammates being at the right spots, supporting you at the right time and whatever. So I think mostly that comes from your teammates.
Okay. I don't know. You guys got any opinions on that?
I forgot the question.
No, that's all right.
I saw an
I
helicopter
also
flying.
forgot- I also
I saw an helicopter flying. My ADHD was like, wow.
Yeah, there's a few of those around. We've got a nice view here. But look,
Regarding that, actually, with the flow stuff, I feel like when I have a shit game, sometimes I would feel like, oh, I'm playing such a bad entry. Then I would go watch it, and I'd be like,
It wasn't that bad.
Yeah,
Apex
you
failed
got
this flash
unlucky
here.
sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. Like
Yeah.
you don't watch and you're like, it was that bad as it felt like. And I feel like some matches that it goes really well, I would watch and I would be like, what, the enemy just came to, like, it was, I didn't even need to do my role to the end. They just, you're just, the most simple default takes and kills too, sometimes like that's, but I do feel like a lot of this is thanks to like the teammates helping you with ping pong, Because
Yeah,
I think it's also nice that, like, let's say on Inferno, I don't play banana. I'm not taking space there. I'm on boiler, and I will entry frag when I come back to B with Mezi and Zayu. And I think sometimes it's nice that you're like, if it's not anti-star, but like Mezi is coming and usually he's on top of C1. He played top of C1 the last 3 rounds. And if we do a pop and it's early round, he might play there again because he does the retake utility. So I think it's nice sometimes to have this, and it gets me back into like, even if he's not there, I'm so confident in my entry, you know? If someone is like behind me, it's like, I'm following you, go. Shit like that, I'm like, yeah, fuck it. Like,
But that's a pretty rare thing, right? Because we've all played with players who like to bait. You know, the guys who
Yeah.
don't like to go in first. But the positions that you guys play, you don't get a choice. And you can get like smacked down round after round and things like, like I don't want to go for that space anymore. But it's your role. It's what
I mean,
you
it
have
depends
to
on the map, to be honest.
Sure.
Because like Yekindar said at the beginning, like nowadays, it's not only one guy.
do. Yeah.
Depends on the, like, for example, Anubis can be, for us at least, it's U-Stick because he has that role. On Ancient, it's me. On Mirage, it's me and U-Stick. And it's different. Like, depends on the map and what role
Bit
you
as
have
well
on
on
the map.
Nuke, for example.
Exactly, yes.
There's many, yeah.
Oh, on Anubis, yes, Bit as well. On
Yeah,
A,
yeah.
for example. It's just,
I think there's usually like at least 2 or like minimum 2, but like there's usually like 3 or 4 players that can have this natural feeling of when to go. If you don't have like 3 players and you have like only 2 or maybe even 1
tough.
player, it's really hard to
it's
play.
very tough.
It's really hard to play.
So it's about taking the risk. Or it's a calculated risk.
It's more about like it's how flameZ said about the ping pong or whatever, because it's like you naturally want to go for space or for a gap that you see, but your teammates like for you like of course if you kill somebody or whatever you're gonna win the round, right? But if for example you go for the gap and there's like your gap was wrong, for example, you still have a chance if you have these natural players that are on the other side of the map who's gonna take the other gap or
Sure.
the other space you created, even though you die. They're like sometimes that's why like for example there's many situations. For example, you go like peak Inferno B against an op kills you, and yes you die to an op,
But they take arch space.
they take arch
Yeah.
space and you still can win the round.
Yeah.
And a really high percent, even though it's 4v5, you can still win the
But
round.
those people need to be ready to do that move. Because if you're not ready,
Yeah.
it's not
Then
good
it's in
anymore.
vain. You die for no reason.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it comes both ways. It comes also from you and your responsibility of like, guys, be ready. I'm gonna be peeking B, and you kind of like already are getting them on the same page, because otherwise you're just peeking B, and they're, for example, they were not even close or they were not ready, and they eventually they're gonna react to that information, but they could have been closer if you communicated it better.
Sure.
Right, and they could, and because of that, the round could differ to if it's a win or a loss. So it comes both ways. It comes kind of responsibility of other players to kind of ping pong off you, but at the same time, it's also your responsibility of like when to go and how to communicate that you're going. So it's a really fun role, but sometimes it can be really difficult.
Sure. Do you guys think that because how tough the role is, you guys should be the ones against full ecos who get to go in first? Should that be like a state mandated counter
I
strike?
mean,
we never get it though. then some.
I mean, I'm saying from my experience on Ancient. On Ancient, I think it's the most fun on T side.
Oh, you're going mid and there's
yes, I
USPs
go
running
mid.
mid.
But for example, if someone comes, okay, you hold flash now for me, bro. I'm doing the
Yeah,
hard part
chill out.
against
Calm down.
weapons. Let
Yeah.
me do it on PC
Yeah,
myself,
yeah,
no?
yeah.
It's
Exactly.
fair enough.
I think so.
I don't mind it all anymore. I don't really care. If for example Roland is like, I'm gonna buy a Mac 10, I'm gonna take bananas. I'm like,
That's totally different. If you have Mark 10, yes, just go and kill.
no,
Bro,
but sometimes Mac 10s like show just on those rounds.
Yeah, true.
So,
Yeah.
so it's like, but it doesn't really matter that much for me personally. I think it's like if people need like confidence skills or whatever,
Go for
I don't mind. I
Yeah,
don't
that's the thing, right? There's some players you play with, if they get a couple kills in the pistol, they're hot
Oh,
for the
they're-
rest of the
yeah,
game, right? And the crazy thing is, that's existed for 20 years of Counter-Strike,
Yeah,
boys,
yeah.
I'll tell you that much. Like, it's kind of wild. So, okay, the role, as we've discussed, you need to have, I guess, the selflessness as a team player to be able to make a move
Yeah.
for the benefit of the team, not just your stats, right? Not what your contribution is to the round is not necessarily kills, but it's space and information that your teammates can capitalize off of, which is then nurtured to the rest of the team with communication.
Yeah.
So what's the most important element? Is it the nature of being that type of a player, or is it having good comms, or
I think it's feeling.
feeling?
I think it's
Okay.
just understanding where, like, just
when to
so-
go.
Yeah, when
So
to go and
intuition.
whatnot. Exactly, intuition. I think it's more that you can play as structured as you want, but in the end, the intuition player who's playing that role, he's gonna win most of the time because he can adapt on the fly on like what's happening, and he can communicate. Like communication is like another thing as well, but he communicates what he sees. Like on Inferno, they were taking banana 12 rounds in a row, and then on 13th round they're like not taking banana, and you're like, guys, careful mid setup. There, he's throwing his nades too fast and whatever. You're already communicating to your
Sure.
team that there's
The
like
expectation.
exactly, and it's like these little comms, and I feel like a lot of the viewers as well, they don't necessarily see, of course, because we don't have team speaks and everything, but there's a lot of communication done from our position that couldn't be helped to direct the round or whatever in the right direction, for example. And do these two things, like the feeling and the communication, is the most important.
Do you guys agree with that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, would you say that? Well, I don't know as much for you, but maybe. But like, I would imagine you and Navi have the second loudest voice with most of the positions that you play, and then I would probably say the same in Liquid.
Yeah.
And then, what is it like for you in Vitality?
Very dependent on the map.
Okay.
Very dependent on the map. Like some maps, because I'm not a room taker in every map. So Inferno, I'm not. It's just for us in Vitality. It's just. Well, I guess for every team, it's like some rounds you're gonna be like a lurk as the entry fragger. Like you're gonna take the space and then you're gonna. But your teammates are like 3 on A on Anubis and they're defaulting and they're taking A. And then mezZ is sort of the guys in charge of the entry fragging.
Sure.
And then. But you always want to, like, you'll always have input obviously, but sometimes it's just like, this is not the game that you're gonna be in charge of, sort of thing. Like, you just, Apex has a good feeling that, like, today we're gonna fucking own them on B, and then today we're gonna fucking own them on B, and I'm not playing B, so as an entry fragger, I might even take a step back, I might be even ready to support, I might, like, let's say on Inferno, sometimes I wouldn't even start second, and Spinks can lark on his own, and I would be on Mexico holding middle from the back, and
Close
very
banana
fast.
to trade and
Yes,
whatever.
very fast.
It's the boring one that I said because I have the same role.
Yeah.
Holding flasher for banana, then just hold in middle, maybe smoke sometimes long, volley short, and then go back, go B. Hold flasher for them to pull B.
And it also, like, I think it also depends on like how enemies are playing, because it's like sometimes you're having so much fun when they're like you're constantly fighting against each other on banana, like trading utility. Boom, they're pushing, you kill them. But next time they push you, they kill you, for example, whatever. Sometimes you play banana, they have 3 nades, they're smoking passive B, throwing retake nades. You're not getting anything, and then you go A, and you're looking on banana, or you're going, for example, back long, or going short, or for example, doesn't matter. Half of the like 60 seconds of the round, you did not do. You just traded utility, took the space, and then you go to the other side and you die. For example, sometimes it happens like this, and then it's like.
Also yourself, like how you played the last 2 matches.
Sure.
Like
Yeah,
you,
yeah.
you
How
might
much you
play.
have to tweak.
You might, you have to tweak. Sometimes you have to change your position. So sometimes, like let's say Dust. I think if people are interested in me now, they will see like I'm running low every fucking round, and then the next game I expect an Opera to be there. So then I'm like, okay, well, Opera to be there, or some like kind of lower traps, right? Maybe boost short. It could be a lot of things. So then we might play it slow and with utility, right? But so it transitions how I'm gonna speak as well, because also the anti-strats benefits me in the sense that I don't need to.
There's less risk.
Yes,
Yeah.
I don't. Let's like talking because everybody's on the same page already. You don't need to. Guys, do that. Apex Nimoli lower time. I need the flash here. So sometimes it just aligns very well that you don't need to talk. But when it gets to okay, we're finishing B, then you get back into like okay, I'm gonna run. I'm gonna look on the right side. Depends on who had entries with you, and with some places like. On the question about like how many entries in your team, like there are some players that you know they're gonna enter a bit. Like let's say when I'm with Spinks and I'm behind Spinks, I know that Spinks is not gonna run. I know
He's going to be like Rops, very procedural, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like he would like to take his time slowly, like.
But
sort of
you're
like
going
this league.
wide.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I need to transition into entering with him.
Yes.
And if I'm with Zayu, I need to be as wide as I can. I cannot stop when I see the enemy because the guy is just gonna shoot him into like and this is it's very dependent on how you, like let's say Spinks has a timing to go B but it doesn't take the timing and I run with him, I run towards B with my knife and then I push, then I understand we need to go out, we need to be wide, we need to be as wide as we can. But sometimes it's Spinks' way of entering is way better for the side because they're holding angles or they're just like not picking, sort of they're waiting for you in those off angles ready to shoot you, and then you need to like adapt to how he would like to enter.
Sure.
And then support him in that. So like don't full swing a bit, let the guy pick you, Spinks will sort of like that. So
Yeah, I think that's something you see, like, so with Carrigan's a good example, right? Like, he's going to go wide and he's going to take the space because he's expecting to be traded or to get the room and the reaction comes. I was going to ask because there's a lot of ways that people can train now, right? Like, pre-fire is an example, and someone who's procedurally going through angles, because when you guys default, it's not all fast and random. Like Ancient is a bit more fast and random if you want to take the control, right? You're running through smokes, mollies are coming over, flashes, nades. But let's say you're doing an Anubis default and your job is to take a main control. Well, you're waiting for their early util, you're throwing the baskets molly, you're throwing the deep smoke. So do you guys like go between different styles depending on the area of the map of how you want to be clearing? Because you're talking about when you're going into a site and it's that crunch moment, you're probably more often than not going to go wide, right, to make the space.
Yeah.
But there's got to be times where that's not the right option, and the right option is to be a bit more procedural. So is that just
It
identifying?
depends what happened on the map, because you cannot
Okay.
just fully execute every round. Like most of the pair one now, like they're playing out of defaults or out of what happened on the map, and then you will not meet like, I don't know,
Many players there. Yeah.
not like many players, like max 2, I would say. That's the max, like on every side.
Okay.
If it's more than 2, it's a stack. If it's more than 3, it's mostly equal.
played.
Equal and full
That's
stack.
well played.
What's it?
It's a well played. Sometimes you have to give them the hand. I'm playing VP, I'm entering banana, and there are 2 on the
Yeah,
boost.
but
Like,
VP is good example, because they gamble a lot,
Yeah.
because they want to save as well. So that's a different like play style, let's say, and then probably you have to play different against them. So I would say it's totally different that you said. And speaking out entries, because you spoke about you don't have on every map the role that you can make space and all of this stuff. Like for example, me on Anubis, bro, I'm full FK on B.
Anubis?
On Anubis
Are you
this
playing
side.
B?
Yeah, I'm playing
Oh,
B.
yeah, that's
Bro,
a-
I'm full FK. I'm not
Yeah.
speaking a lot, and sometimes I want to speak, but I have nothing to speak because there is actually nothing. Also on Inferno, still kind of
Second,
FK.
You both
Yes,
the guy?
I have the same role like you.
Yeah.
And on City side, kind of the same, because mostly on Inferno, Banana guy needs to speak, how he wants to take it, if he wants to take it, and so on. And yeah, like in my opinion, you should have like 2 guys that are used to speak, but not the IGL, because IGL needs to speak overall, and then you have to have 2 players that need to speak what they see. Maybe they do their anti-strat before on their role, exactly like, I don't know, Justic on Inferno, he's watching how the enemy is taking banana and all of this stuff, what he wants to play, because I think it's better for the player himself to do a play than IGL comes, we have to do this.
Sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Like
So do you design your plays?
Mostly,
Yes.
I like to do it, yeah. Like, usually Blade, Alexi comes with ideas, okay, let's do this, we can do this against them, we can change this strat, because they are doing this, etc., etc. But if I see something that my enemy is doing and I think it's not smart at all, let's fucking do it. Like,
Sure.
Yeah. It's like sometimes people come with like ideas what to do, but sometimes it's just not comfortable for you.
Sure.
Yes.
Like you, I don't know, you just don't like it. You're uncomfortable in this duel, for example, that it puts you in or whatever. About the things you said about when to walk in, when to like flash in or whatever. Like I think it also comes from expectations. You're playing a feeling. You understood. Like for example, you walked A on Anubis like 4 rounds in a row, and there was nobody in main. Maybe on the 5th time you're gonna be like, okay, maybe they're gonna put an main setup, and then you ask for a flash, for example, or whatever. But also it's like, yes, information all across the map. Like,
and you also have anti-stat before this.
Yes,
What they
exactly.
do if they do this.
But
Yeah.
does it feel like we're only got a couple minutes left? But this last one is I wanted to ask about your roles anyway, because you're going up against certain tells of setups. Like if they double molly mid on Ancient, they're most likely going to do this, right? But like that type of an anti, because you're saying,
but I feel like this, you don't have too much of those tells anymore.
okay, so because everyone's changing so often.
Yeah, I feel like there is not
You
like.
will be surprised, my friend.
Yeah,
Oh!
you'll be surprised. I feel like a lot of the times you would like you would see the enemy team and they throw 2 Molotovs, but
There are specific plays that require specific utility.
Yes.
And as much as you can mask it or you
Yeah.
try to mask it, sometimes you just want to do this play. Like people running out cave fast to clear like street or whatever,
well, in,
like on Ancient.
I don't play.
Right?
Yeah, but I
the
get
flash
it.
is
Well, that's
not even
right,
come,
yeah,
the flash
yeah,
is
yeah.
there
No,
come.
but I think
G2 is throwing a Molotov bucket every time they
Yep.
do it, for example, and you're like you see the Molotov coming in, you instantly understand what's going. I don't know how much
I
they're
think
doing
on
it
Anubis-
now.
And it's not like it's gonna happen. Like that's the most dangerous thing. You need to respect it.
Yes, exactly. So
Sure.
it's like they can throw more. If it didn't happen, it doesn't really matter. You just
But
play.
you're ready for
yeah,
it.
exactly.
But I feel like in the top like 5 teams, let's say on Anubis, you guys at the start of Anubis, we parked against you like to do the stair smoke and you push, but you do the stair smoke every round. So when do you push?
Yeah.
This kind of stuff. So
Yeah,
like
yeah.
you do have some tells, and but in some games we're looking at it and we're like, okay, well, if this utility happens, they can be aggressive. So every time we see the smoke, guys, watch out, watch out. But and at some point, just like, guys, be ready for this kind of stuff
Sure.
against them. And it's just like a matter of, like, obviously the map, obviously like some things are like huge tells, but I feel like we don't really have those tells when you come to playoffs, to stage games, you don't really have those like huge tells that win you around single-handed.
Super tells probably not, but like
Yeah.
you at least those
Yeah.
little
Yeah.
tells
They
that
play
you
3B.
play a little bit
Yeah.
more cautious
Yes.
about
I
like
think a lot of
some
those, like,
things.
if they do that kind of thing, they're 3 on B. If they do, and sometimes you can play around it, and sometimes the enemy, well, they don't.
But it's also like what you said, but maybe it's not the round. Maybe it's like the idea that they want to do.
yeah,
So, for example, maybe you know that whenever they do, you said double molly on ancient. Maybe on double molly on ancient, they want to make that they play aggressive middle, but they are not, and they
They're
are 3B,
pushing A main
and
or
they're
something,
pushing
yeah.
B or A main, or
Yeah.
it doesn't matter. It could be anything. And if you don't know the idea, you know at least that maybe they are 3 towards B, they will push sooner or later, or you're gonna be ready for that.
Sounds like you have to be ready for everything, though.
Yeah,
John.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
welcome to the club.
All right, look, is there any final thoughts on today's conversation that you'd like the people at home to know? That's very vague. I couldn't have been more vague if I
Yeah,
tried right
very
there.
vague, mate.
Anything at all?
Helicopters.
Helicopters?
I think my assistant coach in OG, he brought up a good point when we were playing. He was always saying that. You remember how we started? You said something about the city anchor positions. I think sometimes it's really nice to have the same positions on both sides.
Sure,
Yeah.
so you understand.
Yes.
You follow the meta without needing to grind
Yeah,
following
exactly.
the meta.
Sure, okay.
Just playing it, and you play practice, and okay, I'm city, I need to do that kind of thing. It answers a lot of questions on terror. It makes a lot of questions of what you can do, and I think it's very tough in some maps to match that, because you have to understand, you have to like expertise in
2 roles.
two
roles, yeah,
roles in both sides. So like,
Sure.
if you're a T player on Inferno on ups, you have to understand how A players are going to play on City, and depends on each team and depends on how you. And then it creates a bit of a tough area in which when you're a newbies A and newbies A on City and Terror, you know, well, the guy does this more than AG. Well, I do that.
Sure.
I know what. So I
You
think
know the
it's-
answers already.
you have a good idea. Maybe you don't know the answer. It depends on the team. Like also in the understand like how the ideology of the team is. But it just like it makes. I think it makes really easy. Not easy, but just it makes your life a bit easier as an entry fragger because you don't need your teammate to come and adapt to what you need to do.
Sure.
You just do it yourself. So.
Nice. You get the final say.
Yeah, I mean mirroring roles is super important. I think it's super nice individually, but I think also like having an experience of playing a different part of the map is also really valuable in terms of like understanding like what pressure can you provide, like whatever, to help that other side of the map and whatever, how to connect both sides together, because you can play like beyond Inferno like always like you're B player, you don't like even think about A and that's their responsibility, but I think that's the wrong way of kind of thinking about it.
Sure.
And the more of the map you understand, the better it's going to be for you. And yeah, I hope more players are going to be playing this
This role.
interesting role. Yeah.
Don't debate.
All right. Lovely. Thank you, gentlemen. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
All right, welcome to Intel Extreme Masters in Rio. We're actually sitting outside overlooking the city a little bit, so you get all the traffic, you get the whole environment of the city, helicopters and planes in the backgrounds. We're gonna have a good time. I'm here with EliGE, I'm here with Device. We're gonna talk about a really simple subject, which is the evolution of Counter-Strike, I believe is the headline of this lecture. So I guess kind of a weird place to begin, but John, you asked me this question when I first stepped into Liquid as a coach. You asked how we get to a point where we can define and set the meta. Like, what's the best way to go about that? And I guess that's kind of a very open-ended question for you guys to take wherever you want, as someone who has obviously defined the meta in the past and who has been part of the different metas over the years. How hard is it to actually find that trick that can elevate your team to a new philosophy?
Well, I feel like unless you find something like super fundamental that like everyone else just doesn't get, I think the first step is always just getting there to the top. Like I always feel like you shouldn't try to redo the wheels until you like can do some of it yourself. So like if you're like a silver level player, you don't just start trying to define the meta yourself. You have to first get to global, if you're gonna like say it like that. So I think that's pretty much the first step. And then after that, I think it's whatever like problem solving that you just figure out better than the other teams.
Yeah. Is that how you kind of looked at it?
Yeah, I mean, I think defining the meta is you achieve it when you are winning. It's something that like everyone kind of tries to reflect and navigate like the maps and in the macro level and the individual stuff as well. But you can only really define a meta if you're winning and if you're doing it better. So like a lot of teams are doing things differently now also in CS2, but the ones that are kind of defining how the game is played and what the other teams are doing as well is the people that are winning, right? So
Yeah.
for me as well, meta is mostly on maps now because everything like CS mindset is almost the same on all teams. So it's mostly on the maps that you can try to like change the way you approach the map. Whereas like the game is fundamentally like on the high level, on a really high level, and it's mostly viewed the same way in my opinion.
I guess the example that I would ask if I could give, and tell me if this is in the right kind of that train of thought, is, you know, back in the day, in the early days of CSGO, we had, you know, kind of like the what's the best way to put it? I guess the best example I can think of is like the LDLC, like that mob mentality, that like death ball of 4 players and 1 lurker that they did on every single map. And nowadays it's like you play Nuke in this kind of a style, and you play Inferno in this sort of a style. So it's changed now from map to map.
Yeah, I mean, you can kind of play like that way on a lot of different rounds. Like, it's always just a mix of adding all that stuff in, and I think that's where, like, Astralis, when they were the best, just owning everyone, that's what you guys are super good at, just adding all that stuff in, having good timings for playing slow, playing fast, like having 4-1s and everything like that. So I think what Device said makes sense before as well in terms of, like, per map is where you're mainly going to see the meta shifts, because I don't really know how much more you can really change fundamentally how everyone is going to play all the rounds.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's always been a trend, right? Like, there's a basic default and basic utility that every team uses, and it's about the framework of building around that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to jump in, and I think that one thing that I think you see more now is like the teams have chosen like their intent of the round at the beginning of the round, and a lot in the international teams as well.
Okay.
So that's like, for me, I think if you have to look at it from not only on the individual maps, but something that repeats itself, is probably like that a lot of teams choosing their direction of the round in the beginning, and of course they can always jump off and go with the flow and the intuition and what they're seeing, but yeah, from my opinion, that's like the only meta change that has happened throughout maybe the last year, that you see more teams. It's easier to know exactly what you want to do and do the protocols right if you know you're gonna finish B right. So then a lot of things can happen in the round, and you can
change it up, but that's all an X factor. It's let's do a default with a lean towards the B bomb site, or default with our lean towards A, and go from
exactly
there. Okay. I guess with you, an interesting topic of this is obviously part of that great Astralis lineup that kind of, I don't even know what to call it. I guess we'll call it like the utility usage meta that you guys brought in like 2018, late 2017, Inferno being the best example of that. Did you guys realize at the time when like you were putting this practice into utility that no other team was doing, and looking at it this way that no other team was doing it, did you realize at the time that you were going to kind of revolutionize the game? Or did it sort of led to that success as you talked about, winning sets the meta, and then you look back and you're like, oh shit, we actually did something that everyone has to pick up now?
First of all, I think that what we actually did more than changing the utility was mostly having the entire team focus on the anti-strat, like doing it together, looking at the opponents together, making sure you're seeing the same things and talking a lot about that, like, and then looking at the weaknesses. And some of the weaknesses that we saw was that like it was really easy to, because the heat map back then was like people were just doing the same things over and over. So on the T side it was really easy to do nade stacks, because like
this guy stands in the same spot.
You can basically get a kill almost every round if you are like focusing on that. And then in practice it wasn't that huge of a thing for us, but it was mostly going into official games and looking at the anti-strat where okay, if we can get a first kill without even like having to take a duel, then let's try to do that. And as I think as the conversation started from the outside world, I think we became more focused on it a little bit ourselves as well. So it was maybe, it just happened, but it was from the approach of anti-stratting for sure.
Yeah. And I mean, for you, John, I mean, sorry to say that you were obviously at the other end of that for a good year of 2018, of just running into that brick wall. So what is it from the other side of that, where you have one team who's so strong and kind of defining a really effective way of playing, and you guys got countless second places that year too, Astralis, like trying to break through that. Like, did you always just feel like you were a step behind and there was just no way around it?
Well, it was hard obviously because they were the ones that were defining the meta, and it wasn't really about like the HEs, kind of like how he was saying. Like we didn't really think about like their HE usage. Obviously we did in terms of like we know that they were doing it, but what was really hard to anti-strat from our side was that they were just really good at defaulting, and like the way that they worked the map was really really strong. Where it's some teams you could just be like. They have like this kind of pace and they're gonna like do like these types of strats, but I thought that Astralis was really good at the time of mixing it up and making it not very easy to read them of how like they're gonna end the round. So I thought that was like the hardest thing for us to like break through, and compared to them like with other teams, I don't think that we really struggled versus any of the other teams like that entire year because of that. But I always just kind of felt like looking back at it, we were just a worse version of them because we were always doing what they did, where we just wanted to be really good at defaulting and like working the map really well. And I think that we understood like their style of how to play it. But what we lacked in was the anti-strat part of it, where we weren't good enough at anti-stratting to be able to understand how to counter them good enough.
Sure. Have you guys gone back and watched any like old school Counter-Strike from CSGO, like 2016, 2017, 18? Yeah.
No.
No, none of it?
I've seen some of it, but not recently, but
not recently.
Throughout the years, yeah, for sure.
Is it funny looking back and being like, holy hell, we used to play that way?
Yeah, and you did the same thing in 2017. I was watching like the 2014 stuff, people just running around like, it's silly, right?
It's funny how much we take for granted the things that just seem so logical now, but no one was doing it back in the day.
Well, 2018, 2019, I don't think was that far off from where we are now. I still think like if you brought any top team from 2018, 2019, they'd be pretty good right now.
They'd be pretty solid right now?
I think so. Like obviously you'd have to learn the map specific meta things, but that's quick. Like you would learn that quick.
Yeah.
Is there a particular reason why you think they match up well? You just think the style of play hasn't changed too drastically to leave them behind?
Yeah, that's what I think. I think that just the style of Counter-Strike is the same, like in how most top players were thinking back then, I think is pretty similar to now. Obviously it's advanced and it's always going to get a little bit better, but I just think if you just transported, those teams from then to now, I don't think they would take too long.
Yeah, COVID was a bitch for a lot of us, wasn't it? Ruined a lot of good teams out there. Tactics kind of work in like a circular fashion where it's like, this is working, it's working, it's working, people figure out it's not working, and then it's all of a sudden back around to where it can all of a sudden work again. Do you find yourselves ever looking back and thinking back to some things you've done in the past and been like, that might be able to have impact here?
Yeah, I mean, in the oldest Astralis, and also, I think, just in my opinion at least, like, if you have a really deep strat book and like, you know how to play the map, it constantly also changes to which team you are playing as well and which round you are playing, and now you have less rounds, so you have to be, I think that it's a like circular motion, or what you say, like you have to cycle the rounds correctly against the right teams, and you can't really how do you say, like you don't have enough rounds to play the whole map in a MR12 as well. So you have to have good intent with what you want to do in the certain games, but you need to know how to play the map in all different ways of playing the map if you want to be the best on the map. Okay. That's at least my opinion. Ancient is a good way of like looking at it. The way you focus around the mid, and like then the CTs will not play A, and then you have to be like you need to play the entire map. But you can't do that in a best of one. So you need to, when the other team is like looking at you, you need to be able to play all around the map to play it as the best team in the world. But some teams can also just play like the risky rounds and just win some best of ones of that.
Right.
That's where I think like MR12 is way different. Like if you have a.
So you're saying you feel like MR12 has sort of forced you to shift. Maybe not the meta, but the way you think about which tactics you're going to run. And the way you think about the game.
Also with the defaulting part, like it's a little bit harder with less rounds to do the defaulting part now, but also defines like some of the wins is just like pure individual skill, at least in CS2. Like it seems like not the skill gap is a little bit smaller from the individual standpoint. So and if you can take over a few rounds in a MR12, you can basically win a map of that.
John, I just want to go back because I think it's such a cool concept of you take those 2018, 2019 teams and transplant them now and they could still be effective. What do you think has been the biggest change in the way Counter-Strike is played between then and now? I mean, obviously you haven't think anything's drastically changed, but there's been a couple.
Yeah, I mean, I think that like the way that people think is just like a little bit quicker in terms of like ante. I think that teams are more well-rounded of, you know, understanding how they want to like counter certain things.
Yeah.
Just because there's been so many strats that have just been like out and about, and that's kind of like what we were saying before about like meta. When you bring like these strats back around, I think that's usually just like the result of you find some way to counter one strat, and then another guy finds a way to like counter that strat, and then you find a way to counter that strat back, and then maybe like the second or third time that like whole thing happens, now they're open to like losing to the very beginning thing that you know you guys like first like anteed.
So like I remember how to beat this from 2 years ago. Or
yeah,
3
like
years
or
ago.
you're like, oh, these guys would be really weak against this now. Now that everyone's doing this, now they're going to be really bad against that.
Yeah.
So I think just everyone's very quick to like pick up on that stuff, and obviously individuals have gotten a lot better. But like I don't know, I think just like the team play aspect of how people played just isn't like that different.
Okay.
And I think that I think individual skill has obviously gone up as well. So I think it would be hard, but I don't think it's like that crazy to me. I don't think it's that crazy.
Yeah, no,
From watching the games back, like, because I have watched like 2018, 2019 games back, and I don't think it was like that crazy different.
Okay. Maybe should have done this at the start, but it just kind of clicked in my brain. It'd be kind of a cool idea if you guys brought your head back to like 2014 and on, like early days of CSGO. What would you say are like the different eras of metas that we've sort of gone through, you know? Like we have the eras of teams, but in terms of gameplay, like we obviously had the Krieg and AUG meta for a while.
Yeah.
I guess the AWP-CZ era meta would be one of them as well. LDL-CZ, like the danger of force buy, like are these all small factors of metas, but is there one way where you could go back and pick a moment in time and say, this was the prevailing meta of how to play the game in this moment? And it's okay if you say no. I'm just kind of curious if you guys have that in your head.
I think like SK Luminosity, they had like their play style, but it was hard to kind of define really what it was, in my opinion. But they definitely, everyone looked at them and their way of approaching the game, and like the CD side, which was really, really strong at that point of time. That's one thing I at least remember, but it's hard to like, it's not as if they were good with like a certain gun or utility, or they just had like 3-4 really good maps with like 70-80% win rate on, and then you win everything if you have that. So
that was kind of a cool team because they kind of have like, you know, like Fnatic and NIP and Astralis after them, they have like an era.
Yeah.
But that era was they only really won like 2 majors in 2016. But that's the year where like that's the Brazilian era.
Yeah.
And it wasn't winning that made it happen. It was they seemed so far ahead of the game tactically that made it happen more than anything.
Yeah, I think the main thing that I remember from them and like what I learned from them is just having a bunch of different strats that like look really similar. Now, I don't know if like that was just because like we were really bad before that, but that's what I like learned from like the SK guys is just, you know, you have to just like have a bunch of strats that look really similar and do something slightly different, and just like having all these variations, because I don't remember us doing that before the SK guys. And that's, I think, when a really big like shift happened, when it got a lot harder to like understand like what was going on in the rounds.
Okay. I want to talk a little bit about map pools, because obviously always an interesting conversation, and over the years I think map pool's been a great way that teams have found advantages. But one of the concepts I wanted to touch on with it is different points of map pool eras, like kind of you prioritize different maps, right? Like there are certain maps that are really important to be good at because you're going to see them in series play frequently. There are certain maps you can maybe get lax on is not the right way to phrase it, but are not as important to be a dominant team on. What would those maps be like right now that you feel are really important in this current map pool? Or also, if you disagree with the premise, feel free to disagree with the premise.
I think it depends on like per tournament, even for me. Like right now, I think it's like kind of
who are you
per
going to get in
tournament.
group stages as well?
Yeah, like if I have like, you know, Spirit, Vitality, like that's a different like map pool than if I was going to play like Mouse and Eternal Fire, for example. So if I was going to play like Mouse, Eternal Fire, if I'm a team that bans Vertigo, like I'm pretty happy. So I think it kind of depends. But if I was playing Spirit and Vitality, then, you know, banning like Inferno is good because, you know, Vitality is really good at it, but for Spirit it doesn't really help too much. But I don't know, I think just in general, I'd say Ancient is really important. I think that everybody plays Ancient, and it's an important map to have like in your map pool. And then outside of that, I don't know.
Historically, Inferno is always pretty important.
Inferno too, yeah.
Not so much these days, I feel, but historically.
Yeah.
I feel like if you are pushing to become like one of the best teams, if you are not like in the established like top 5 and stuff, I think you can't really ban Vertigo because a lot of those teams don't play it or don't play it well, and they don't play it often against each other.
Okay.
So that's one thing I at least think sometimes is like it's not smart to have Vert as your perm ban, because if you have to face or Spirit or like Vitality, it's not the strong maps, and some of the other teams even ban it like Navi. So that's
Navi
one
and
thing.
G2, I think both ban it right now.
Yeah, so that's one thing, and I think also some of like at least Inferno is like always good to have a good Inferno because you play it a lot of times in the third map, and it's just also a really defaulty map. Like it's hard to be an Inferno expert. Like the map depth isn't, in my opinion, is like that's at least one map where it's like just played as it's always been played.
Yeah.
You
No
can,
big changes on it.
Yeah.
So I agree with like Ancient also being really important.
Well, I guess too, like one thing I've just kind of picked up there is, I guess the philosophy of looking at that as a problem would be, for instance, you're saying it's not very valuable to veto Vertigo because no one's great on it. You know, for all the top teams, it's kind of a middle of the road map.
Yeah.
Versus an era, let's say, where Astralis, you guys had that massive nuke run back in the day. Does that make it important to be good at nuke so you can challenge them on it? Or like, do you look at it from the perspective of, I can play Vertigo against these teams, so it's super important I'm good at? Or there are a bunch of teams really good at this map, so I can not play it, or I need to get better at it?
I mean, for me, I think that you need to have like a few good maps that you feel like, okay, we can play against the best teams in the world and maybe even be the best team in the world on one of them. Then you need to be competitive. Like as if we take the example of us on Nuke back in the day, I mean like we had Nuke and Inferno, which was really strong for us. So we would always like, okay, we could look at, are we picking into our strengths, or is there something obvious in the opponent's map pool that is really weak, right?
I'm just always curious about that philosophy of how that problem is looked at, and I know it changes so much over the years with different timings to it. Let's talk a little bit about one thing that's changed kind of outside of the game. I know you're big into this. I'd be curious how much you're involved, is the evolution of sort of, I guess, a training regimen. And you're big into aim trainers right now. I don't know if you do aim trainers, but over the years we've seen sports psychologists or performance coaches, whatever you want to call them, added into the mix. We've seen physical training now with gym and exercise being added into it, nutritional training, and obviously the inside the server aim training as well. How involved are you guys both in those different aspects of training outside of the game?
Well, for me, I mean, I just try to do everything possible. I think that I like looking at what makes people really good at other disciplines, whether that's like business or like other sports, and just taking what I can from them, because what I've learned from just reading a lot of like books and just excerpts from people that are really successful is most of them all say the same type of stuff, just like a little bit different. So if you just take like the good stuff that they're all kind of saying and you just apply that to our discipline, then we're going to be a lot better. And that's why the individual skill and like the teams are just constantly going to get better, because we're always looking for new ways to get better. And I think those easy ones in terms of like nutrition and like being active, like this is stuff that it's obviously better for you. Like we could just look at the science for it. Like it is the most studied stuff ever, that it's just good for you and you're going to perform better if you're healthier. And that's just what I try to do for everything. And in terms of like training in the game, I'm always just trying to find new stuff that's just gonna like make me better. Or if I see someone that's like really good at something, and be like, okay, how are they that good? Because I've seen some of these guys that have like insane aim, and I'm just like, if I can just apply what they're doing and just get super good at aim as well, because maybe I'm not as gifted as a Nico or like a Bit or something.
I think you're being a little bit humble there, John. I've seen some of your highlights.
Well, we gotta get there somehow. Some people, they're just born with like a higher level, and we all gotta like work a little bit hard for that, and just have to try everything that we can.
When would you say along the stretch of Counter-Strike's time span that it really clicked in that you could maximize your effort in those areas?
I mean, honestly, I think I've always been like that, just because of StarCraft.
Come on, I was gonna say you were a little StarCraft player back in the day with the
StarCraft
bag of McDonald's.
Like I don't know, because you're always just like copying like the Koreans, because they were like the gods of the game and everything like that. So just finding like that efficiency and trying to be efficient with your practice has always been like a core part of me.
Yeah. for you, Device? Did that stuff click in at all? Do you
Yeah.
partake in any of those activities?
I mean, for me, I would say nutrition, exercise, and sleep is like the three outside elements that I focus on. I think that what I've learned over the years of doing different stuff is trying to find something that I also find entertaining, that I can develop in, that I can challenge myself with, whether that being like sleep tracking or in the gym, what you're doing in the gym. Like I started running a lot more recently, like tracking some of the benefits that it like kind of goes in a circle. So
Yeah.
when you improve on one of these things, it also improves the other
The
aspect.
next thing, which improves the next thing, which
Yeah.
So I think that's a important thing, and it's also just something that like investing in your own health is just good now, but it's also good when you get older. So I think looking at the game stuff, I think that I've almost always just been a demo nerd. Like I look at a lot of demos and I look at all of what all of the other orbers are doing, if they're doing something similar or they're doing something like out of the ordinary, and trying to apply some of the stuff that they're doing and try to understand why are they taking this many risks, why are they not taking any risks, what is happening on the team level, and trying to see, is there something I can gain here? I think back in the day I would just like take the moves and just apply them, and without understanding what it really does. Now it's a little bit more, I would say, contextualized in what we are doing as well, and as well as being the in-game leader and being that for like half a year, understanding a lot of the macro stuff that is happening and trying to work in that department has taught me a lot as well.
just out of curiosity, what are the operas in today's game that you enjoy watching, that you think are doing good things? Who are you stealing from?
Oh man, there's a lot of good, actually a lot of good orbers. I think that Ringle he's like one of the biggest playmakers of the like playing with the orb, taking a lot of chances and a lot of peaks. I think that obviously you have to look at Monesi, you have to look at Saiwu and all of those guys, but when I look at them, I think it's also when I look back to when I was also at the very best on Astralis, when you're winning a lot and you don't have to do that much, like the game comes to you in some sort of way. So you also have to understand the balance of not doing too much and just trying to win as a team, and then that's what you see with Saiwu and Monesi. Like they're not doing anything like crazy, but they're doing crazy stuff in the rounds.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's about finding a balance and talking with your team. Do you want to have more pressure as the AWPer and have the other team thinking a lot about the AWPer? Do you just want to play as a team more and take less chances? And I think that the orbing meta is
Constant evolution.
Yeah,
because it's such a core part of the team as well. It's so
same
critical
with
for the team movements.
with the playmaker role as like the rifler, which is, in my opinion, probably the most important role in the game right now, where you have to take map control and have to balance map control. And it's not, from what I see as an outsider, it's not really the in-game leader that can call for the playmaker. The playmaker has to know like how he wants to. Yeah.
You looking at any players in particular right now that you think are doing good work that you're trying to steal from?
I mean, I think I'm the same as Device actually, where there's just a lot of different players. Like I have like a list of like players where if I see like their demo pop, because I like follow the POV channels. If I see them pop up, I'm watching them for sure. Like Frozen, Caserado, Malbs, and Terrace.
Yeah.
I was watching like Wakadia for a while too.
Sure.
So I don't know. I feel like just anyone that looks sick.
There's a lot of hard hitters out
Nico,
there.
like I don't know, just anyone. Even people that aren't in my role, I like watching a lot, because when you play like the role that I play, which is like the playmaker role, you can just kind of be everywhere, and you have to know like what's going on like all of the spots. So you have to be very knowledgeable about like what's the meta on like this spot, what's this guy like doing. I mean, that's kind of more anti, but you know, some people can like define like the meta. Like when Rops was like playing Insane at the beginning of CS2, you know that every single lurker is watching him. Like for sure, everyone's watching him. So if you just watch Rops, you're gonna know what like another person's probably gonna copy, and you're gonna want to do like those moves yourself, which can like open up different things.
And then you're playing Rops in 5 games straight. Everyone's doing the Rops moves, and you gotta worry about that.
Yeah, so there's just like a lot of stuff that like you have to like keep on top of, and you're always just like applying moves from like every single spot that can be really helpful.
We have just a couple minutes left, so I wanted to get one last topic in that we can breeze through just as a fun one. The reason why I was asking about the different training regimens and when you guys kind of got into them is because I think we all look back to the early days of CSGO in 2014, 2015, 2016, maybe even 2017, I think is when I started really feeling towards the end of 2017 that teams are putting it together to start taking this a little bit more professional, a little bit seriously. So without divulging anything crazy, I mean, the atmosphere around professional Counter-Strike in the early years, a lot of partying, a lot of late nights, even before match days, not saying anyone sitting in these chairs right now, mostly from the talent, obviously, but I mean, that's an evolution that you guys experience of looking around and being like, okay, everyone's partying before their playoff match today, and then 2 events later, it's like, oh, everyone's actually in the room and they're going to be up at the gym at 10 in the morning and they're going to be eating a meal like provided by a nutritionist. Like that had to have been a crazy evolution to live through.
Yeah. First of all, we didn't have practice rooms, so
true.
What are we gonna
couldn't do anything.
Yeah. You were just. I mean, I was talking to people about it. Like some of the guys in my team, they don't know that.
Yeah.
Like, what are we supposed to do? We were just at the hotel.
You needed a gaming laptop. Yeah, that was all you needed.
They even started giving us PCs, which we're very grateful for as well.
But I think for us it was in 2016, start 17, where we won the first major, where a famous guy called Casper Witt came to an event and he like saw a lot of other teams also partying and drinking, also the best teams before games. Famously, one team that played a major final that was partying like until the.
I know what you're talking about.
And he was like, if we can just like, there are so many easy percentages to get in this business, which is a growing business, and if you just take yourself serious as a team and as an individual as well, and apply some of the basics from other areas, as EliGE also said, you will gain so much. And I think we were at least one of the first teams that started like just doing simple things like eating breakfast together, going for walks, being a little bit active, not drinking, like doing stuff together.
Shocking that would be an improvement.
And it really just like pivoted. So that's at least what I recall, and I thought it was funny like back then, because it was like, how can these guys be the best team in the world?
Yeah.
There's vodka Red Bull until 4 a.m. How can they even sleep?
It always sucked losing to that too.
Yeah.
Like, you know that they were at the bar like a couple hours ago or something, and you're losing to them. It's like, dude, this sucks.
And imagine how good they would be if
I know.
they like.
Yeah, exactly.
If they took it chill.
Like, they could be so much better, and I think that's cool now. Like, everyone is like trying like their best to do that stuff. Everyone's doing what Astralis did back then. Everyone's like eating at the same times, going to the gym. Like, I see so many teams at the gym now. I think that is really cool, and you don't feel bad now. Like, if you're losing to those guys that are drinking till like 4 a.m.
Well,
now
he was
that doesn't
drinking till
happen.
4 in the morning, but he was pumping weights at 10, so it's fair play.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Well, yeah, we've come a long way. It's been fun. Thank you guys for your time.
Yeah. Thank
Good
you.
luck this week.
Thank you.
We're hanging out here on the balcony in Brazil. I've grabbed 3 coaches from an assortment of the best teams here in attendance of Rio. I've got Tion. Didn't know that one, did you? You got Sid, and we got Philip on the end there, and we're going to hopefully get a little bit of insight into what's going on in the coaching world. Just because I can't, every time I see you guys, obviously when the community sees the most of you, I imagine, and we've described it in the past, is where you get to have the least amount of impact, is those 30-second timeouts. You know, that people think that's kind of, that's what coaching is.
That's what
it's
we
like,
do,
yeah, hang on, it's my 30 seconds,
Yeah.
time to earn my pay, and you like turn the microphone on, change the game, you know?
And then don't forget about the professional fist bumping
Yes.
part, right?
Oh, yeah.
So that's a big part of
Well,
what we do
you
too,
all have
right?
your own techniques. I've been watching Neo work out his own technique. You know?
Yeah.
When you first arrived, you were like, "What the hell am I doing with my hand?"
This is awkward, man. Just trying to work my cheerleading skills, you know.
Yeah.
You need to find your ways, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Part of the job,
It's important that you add your own little bit of pizzazz to it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And I got called out by my fellow talent during Pro League because I was consuming the propaganda. You know, we do the listen-ins, and it would be like an ex-Taz or a Taz timeout, and it would just be like, "Guys, you're doing really well, fucking them up, keep fucking them, man." And it's like, you know, and I'd laugh and I'd go, "Oh wow, I think I could have done that myself," you know, obviously. But the fact that we're getting to listen to it is, you're not going to be showing you the other type of timeout. The cheerleader and the more analytical, statistical-driven coach, data-driven coach. Is that 2 hats you find yourselves wearing every day?
Yeah, you have to do both. It's impossible to be one or the other. I mean, of course, these days we have a big staff. Every team has at least one analyst working together with the coach. So we kind of split that part of the job. But when you get to the stage, and trust me, those 30 seconds, they last even less there. It feels like it's a shorter amount of time than 30 seconds. Sometimes I feel like it's 5 seconds left and I didn't even say what I wanted.
Yeah.
And during the day-to-day thing, we need to split the responsibility of being data-driven or things like that. But when you get to the stage, you need to bring a mix of both worlds, so you can help the team with strats if needed, and also be there to cheer the boys up, and it's really important.
It depends what the team needs at that time as well, right? In those 30 seconds, sometimes they don't need a tactical solution, right? Like sometimes they just need a little kick under the arse. Like it's like, hey, like wake up, you know, like some, and so that's why you get to listen into those timeouts as well. And obviously, because like you said, the broadcast doesn't want to give away the tactical side of things because it's not fair to the teams that don't speak English and you can't listen in on their comms, right? So I mean, it's nice, I guess, that the audience gets to listen into these tactical timeouts every now and then, even though they're not like the tactical aspect of it. But then obviously there's the hate that comes with it. It's like, like, they're just cheerleader coaches. Like, what are they doing? What are they paying them for? So then you look a little bit silly sometimes. But like I said, sometimes that's what the team needs. Sometimes, I mean, you have 5 people on the team who know the game, who understand the game, and they don't always need a tactical solution during the timeout. It's maybe something they're not identifying, or, you know, maybe it's something that we've just forgotten to do, you know. So it's not always about giving them tactical solutions.
Or just to slowing them down a little bit because things get too hyped, you know. But actually, that's what's
too hyped. I haven't had that on my team.
Actually, that's it's very team dependent.
How does that work? How does that work?
That's true. But that's what surprised me. Like those 30 seconds can have a huge impact on the game. Right? You know, you can turn around the score and everything. So that is an impact still, even though it's not enough. And sometimes it's not enough time to express everything you want. Right?
Do you know what I miss? Because I've been doing it for a while, maybe not at tier 1, but I remember like back in 2018, we had tournaments where we could talk during freeze time. So I think it was like a DreamHack Winter or something that we attended, and we were able to talk during freeze time. You weren't able to talk during the round, and then obviously you had your pauses still. I think that was like a nice balance of like at least being able to get something in during the freeze time. But I guess that also goes back to coaches being able to call during freeze time, because you could just call, right, and let the players. But,
I remember
that was nice, just like giving like gentle reminders, saying, "Oh, we're doing this round. Like, don't forget about this.
You've been missing this when we do that."
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I remember people said something about being coaches and IGLs at the same time. I think Sterix for now at some point. People said that he was the coach in the IGL.
Because I think at that point they could talk during the round. They could still actually talk during the round the entire time. It's like basically like playing online where you can just talk like, careful here, watch out, he clear cubby.
When they identify a strat, who does this strat?
When do you draw the line? When do you draw the line?
Exactly.
Sometimes there's so much you want to say and you cannot, right? Like you see something's missing, or
do you know what's the worst also about just you saying about those 30 seconds feeling so short is when you call a timeout and the guys are busy talking about something, and like especially if it's someone like that's really adamant about getting this out, you know, and they don't realize the timeout has started and they're like just eating in it, like 5 seconds are gone, 10 seconds are gone, like you're just trying like, hey, give me a second here, guys.
I mean, it's good when they have the solution themselves. You call the timeout.
It feels like Kanye interrupting Taylor Swift. Like, I'm gonna let you finish, but
I've got 10 seconds. Let's the fuck up.
Exactly.
The other day I had to tell Falloway, I need at least 10 seconds. Give me 10 seconds. Give me 10 seconds. I need to say something in those 10 seconds. But it's another thing that happens. But it's good when they come up with the solution themselves.
It is.
It feels more natural for them to run the.
Absolutely.
The
So I guess you can be like in a kind of an intermediary where like they may come up with an idea and you can just serve as like kind of reinforcing what they've already come up with.
True. I mean, it all depends on the moment, right? Like in which moment they are. If they're still figuring things out, or they have a lot of solutions, too many solutions, maybe help them out. Choose one.
Out of interest, I don't know if you do. Sorry.
No. I was just gonna say that's very important. What you say, there's like just being that intermediary.
Yeah.
It's like, and often like there's never always gonna be like the 100% correct solution, but it's more about like supporting them in that solution. Sometimes like, hey, yeah, this can work, but be careful of X, Y, and Z,
Yes,
right?
Yeah.
So just like reinforcing, like, yeah, this is great, but we just need to watch out for this.
Yeah.
So just being that intermediary,
Yeah,
like
I
you're
like
saying,
that.
is really good.
I was going to ask about like, do you have any memorable timeouts? Are there any timeouts that you recall over your careers that you kind of finished it? You either won the round, you lost the round, but like something that just stands out of like taking the time out, taking those 30 seconds and it being different than normal or not feeling as...
You definitely have those where after the match you like feel like
ooh,
you're like, oh yeah, like you nailed that timeout or whatever, because like you, especially when you read like 100% what they're doing and you just like take a timeout. I'm going to take a timeout now because I know they're going to run this strat. As soon as I call this, they're going to run this strat, and then it works out and it's beautiful. But then sometimes you also have them where you call the timeout, they run that exact strat and they still beat you.
It's like the whole thing.
Knew this was coming, like
It can't be my fault. It can't be my fault.
So it goes both ways. Where it's like you have them, you read what they're doing, you destroy them, everything works out perfectly. But then, like I said, it's like sometimes even though you know what they're doing, like
that's actually when I get the maddest in Counter-Strike. It's like I know exactly what you're gonna do.
Exactly.
And I'm still losing to it.
Yeah.
I remember one from Cologne this year. It was our last match in the playing stage, just qualified for the group stage against Heroic. We were up 12-10 CT side and we lost an alpha round because Jush won before with Tech 9s.
Yeah.
And I paused that and I told the boys, hey, we got this. It's 12-11 now. Let's do this. Let's just stay calm. And then we closed the match. Like we won the next round pretty clean. So
yeah, nice feeling.
Yeah, they had a really nice.
Just because you can see overtime in the future.
Yeah.
Like just take
avoiding overtime, right?
Yeah.
Like that's always nice.
I mean, it's like I was telling him, let's avoid overtime, but in different words, in different words, and that worked. So yeah, that was quite memorable for me.
Good.
Yeah, that was good. That was good.
How long have you been doing this now, Neo?
For a year now.
A full year.
Cologne was my first tournament. So
right.
Yeah. I think there's been too many games to remember like one particular.
Yeah.
But there's so much satisfaction when things work, right? Like that. But also it's interesting, like to be from the other side, right now that I'm coaching, it's totally different.
I must imagine for you as well. It's like it's so much harder to feel like you have impact, like in the coaching role, especially like while the game is going, like compared to like when you're playing, you feel like you have so much more power to do something or make something happen. Whereas like now it's like it's a completely
I imagine that's difficult as an ex-pro, like having so much influence on the game. Like you can win a round on your own. I have the power to. Come on, guys, you can do it.
Get in the backpack. We're going, right?
No, but it's totally a different feeling of the game. Like your mind is busy with the game, right? When you play and like when you stand outside, you don't even have the in-game sound. That's also like there's some clutches. You don't know if he's gonna win or not.
No.
You always have to like look at the player's reaction to see like
is it going well?
Do we have it? Is he gonna get the defuse? Like
no sound. It's so disorienting.
I'm sure you guys can tell as well, but it's like it's such a simple thing we speak about often, but it's like communication, right? And I can tell when our comms aren't on point just because like I'm behind the guys like wondering like what's going on because we're not painting good pictures because you don't have in-game sound, right? So just when that sound gets taken away and our communication is not on point, it's hard for me to have a nice picture of what's going on if the guys aren't on point with their comms, describing everything that's happening in the areas like correctly. It's like we basically call it painting nice pictures.
I'm actually
and everyone needs to do it. Everyone needs to be just be a great artist, painting great pictures of what's happening in the areas. And you can tell when, I'm sure you guys can tell as well, when the comms are so on point that you can basically close your eyes. You don't even need the screen.
I love that idea.
And it's like you could just hear everything that's going on. You know exactly what's happening across the map. And then like when that's not there, it's so obvious. It's so obvious.
That actually comes with the time spent together with the team, right? You start understanding them like when they are on point and when things are working like towards the good direction. So that's the key point, I think.
I mean, I imagine the role it requires, like it's necessary to have a degree of being a people person, having a good understanding of people at least. I think people person is maybe not the right term, but having a good understanding, a good capacity for empathy, so that you can kind of look at your players and identify who's on a good day, who needs a little bit of encouragement. Some people don't like encouragement, some people like something else. Because I mean, even when when it's not at a professional level, we all acknowledge Counter-Strike is about communication, confidence. None of these things we can measure, it's all this it's in the fucking air.
You need to feel, one thing he said is important. When you have a lot of time spent with the team, you start to realize this guy needs this, that guy needs that. So
I will just say that's going to happen. This helicopter's going to fly over here. We're going to keep going, and you're going to deal with it.
It's part of the scenario. No? Yeah. It's fine. It's
setting the atmosphere.
It's amazing. Out here in Rio, right?
Have you done a helicopter here before?
No, I haven't.
No, there's apparently some nice tours. My colleagues.
It was one of the first things that popped up. Like, what you do in Rio?
And you're
take a helicopter tour. And especially I saw there's people doing a helicopter tour of the Christ the Redeemer statue.
Yeah, I was starting to do that.
That's a way to avoid the crowds, right?
My worst habit is I start humming the Jurassic Park theme tune every time I'm driving past these hills. The exactly where it takes me. Well, we're talking about Counter-Strike. We're talking about coaching.
I mean, to get back to what you were saying about having good people skills, I think that's very important actually in the role, especially with the people that you deal with in the industry, right? Like you don't always. Sometimes you have people on the team that aren't very sociable guys. They maybe don't know how to deal with conflict in the best manner. They don't have a lot of life experience. Some of them are coming here, maybe haven't even finished school yet. Some of the guys in the scene at the moment, 16, 17, 18 years old. So being able to have the skills to help these guys through these situations, through these things that are going to get thrown at them, not only in the game, but also in life, right? You're trying to help them grow as people as well, right? You're not just coaching them Counter-Strike. Everyone can figure the game out and and get better and develop at the game, but you're trying to help them grow as individuals as well and to become better people. So I think that's also a big aspect of it that people don't think about.
No, I don't even consider it.
Because there's so much time people spend together in teams. You basically live with them. We've just been talking about that before we started recording. How you guys, coming from outside of Europe, have to come to Europe week after week, and then you either go back home, which doesn't make sense most of the time, and you stay for a boot camp. So you guys live together basically, and there has to be some levels of attitude, respect among each other, and it's not everybody knows that. We come from in front of PCs, most of us. When we're gamers, so it's true. There's a lot of social skills that has to be.
But is that something that kind of you have both fallen into naturally? Is that something that were you always that guy, or is this a guy you've had to learn to become over time?
I mean, I definitely say I've become more of this person.
as you age.
As you grow up, you get more mature, right? You learn how to deal with things.
I know 30-year-olds without any conflict management skills.
Exactly.
They exist.
I mean, I definitely wasn't as sociable as this always growing up, but I mean, then you go to university, right? You meet new people, new friends. I mean, I studied medicine as well, so obviously working in the hospital, dealing with people, dealing with patients every day. I mean, you learn obviously a lot of skills. There as well, so that's easy to be applied. How to work in a team, how to delegate, how to do all of these things.
But you weren't living with your medical students. You weren't what's up, bro? Sick surgery earlier, man.
Exactly.
Remember the rods?
Remember when we cut that open? So, but exactly. So I mean, it's just about learning as you go along, right? And like Neo just said, it's very different. I think that's something that people don't always realize. We were speaking about it earlier, but for the Americas teams, you don't just go tournament, it's tournament, boot camp, you stay in Europe, you go to the next tournament, you have another boot camp, and you're on the road together for 8 weeks, sometimes 10 weeks before you get to go home, before you see your family and friends. So you see your teammates 8, 10, 12 hours a day,
every day.
Every single day. So and it's normal, and it's normal for there to be conflict, because you're also doing this high pressure sport. You're in this high pressure environment where there is constant conflict. So that conflict between people is always going to be there. It's just about whether you deal with it or not. Do you speak about it? Do you bring it up? And like I said earlier, like a lot of the people that we have tend to, maybe be more introverted, so they're going to go back into their shell a lot easier than they're going to rise to the occasion and deal with the conflict. So I think that's why it's important to have the mitigators there, to have people that develop these skills, because it's like we can't talk all the time.
No.
So sometimes conflict's going to happen like during the match and stuff.
You have to watch it happen.
Someone needs to step up and be like, hey, like, I love both of you, but we need to leave this now. Let's deal with this. Let's speak about how we're going to handle the situation, how we're going to be better from here on out, right? Like, so you need to also, that's what I mean by like growing people to be better and, to develop these skills, it's like they're going to need them in life as well, like after Counter-Strike.
Absolutely. We all do it.
Whether it's in a relationship with your girlfriend or whether it's at work, these are skills that people need to have, that people need to learn.
As for me, I had a good example from Gary. I joined the team as an assistant coach. Before becoming the coach, I spent 1.5 years as the assistant coach, and I followed the team and did traveling and everything. And I had a really good example from Gary because I noticed how he was more than a coach to the boys. I mean, they built the team together from the scratch, so they had a different feeling between them there. And I noticed that, and also becoming a dad at age 16 helps me in the job.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I have a 10-year-old boy, and I had to learn a lot about how to deal with people and how to learn people. And sometimes players can be babies, so it's not that different. And
first time
those two things helped me a lot. Noticing how Gary was really impactful with that side of dealing and managing people and pointing them to the right direction in life and everything, and that was something really important for me to pay attention to, and now I try to replicate it. I mean, with my touch, but of course, that was a really good example to see how he dealt with the guys.
I can't imagine how teams would function in the absence of a coach. Like, I just can't see how.
I mean, we did it in the past.
You remember, right? You remember how it used to be.
You know how it was.
But it was different times,
right.
Yeah, there was different ways of, fixing the problems.
A fight at LAN, you just punch each other in the face once or twice, and then everything's
sometimes
fine.
open a bowl of, something and discuss later. I don't know. It's been different times, but with coaches, the coach is that kind of person who, helps handle all these things. So it's not only 30
or just
seconds.
Takes it away from the players and says it's someone else's job now.
Definitely, you can. It's not only 5 guys that have to go along. All work things out on their own. I like the fact that there's more people traveling with the teams nowadays. Every additional person releases the tension that grows in between players, I feel like.
There are things that players they shouldn't be thinking about. There are things that coaches shouldn't be thinking about. And then we have the managers, we have the psychologists, and everybody helping a lot with addressing the problems and everything. But I think it's impossible to have a team without the entire structure these days. Not only the coach. I mean, you need to have a really strong group of staff there.
It's become too professional, right? To not have it. If you want to be competing for the top, like you're saying, just relieving that responsibility from the coaches and from the players, making it one less thing that they have to worry about is so important and underrated.
Do you think that coming into next year, where there is going to be so much additional Counter-Strike going on, so many tournaments teams are going to be choosing.
That sounds crazy.
It does, right? Can you imagine? There's more. There's more. The open circuit coming. Do you imagine that? You've just highlighted how many resources are required to be on the top. My question is, would it be possible for an open qualifier underdog to rise through the ranks like they used to? Back in the day, you'd have a new name kind of, I don't know, maybe, I don't want to exaggerate, maybe every 8 to 12 months there'd be a new name that you had to keep an eye on.
It's a team that pops up every now and then. I feel like it'll still be there, right? That'll
you
always exist because you still get 5 players that can just come together, that can shoot heads, that understand the game, and know how to play it. I feel like getting from the open qualifier to a tournament is not really a problem anymore, but I feel like it's become too professional for a team to come all the way from the open qualifier and win the whole thing.
It's hard to compete.
It's too hard. You don't have the resources that these other teams have available. You don't necessarily have the time that the professional teams have available. I think so. You still have those stories that happen where they get to the tournament, but getting like past the entry level at the tournament, where you're not just getting wrecked at the in the first round of the tournament.
FaZe rock up in their matching tracksuits with their sports bags and like data analysts
with the Louis Vuitton. It's like you're intimidated.
And then you got Rooster Gaming rocking up in like a t-shirt they printed themselves, and they're like, I'm looking forward to it.
But also, what I feel like it's that has changed that you have new teams coming up, like showing up nowadays faster. That the star players from those teams are being bought or like
that's
just
a good
signed.
point.
Yeah, because even if the team like of new 5 players would be better than the team something, they're gonna buy them out and destroy the team.
It
right?
doesn't last long anymore.
Yeah.
There's no protections for that, is there?
Yeah, because I mean, but also it's in that player's best interest to take the offer to further their career, right? Like you have to, like it's fun playing with your friends, but like you have to kind of take the best offer.
Yeah.
Everyone needs to be able to put bread on the table at the end of the day. You want to like progress in your career as quickly as possible.
And we're critical of players that stick around too long. We're critical of players that don't take that offer when they get it.
And nowadays it already starts by academies buying those players, right? So it's even faster than it used to be.
That's true. Academy, that's not going anywhere, is it? Right? Like that's probably that's a workflow that works.
It seems, but I mean mostly in Europe, right?
Yeah.
Just
the
to make
academy
fun.
teams.
CIS team,
Didn't you guys have an academy
We had
team
an
as
academy
well?
project. I think we shut it down for now, but we had that.
Yeah.
But it feels like mostly academy projects are like just another second team of
Right.
Exactly. It's
right?
like
It's not like a
development.
school where you progress
So I mean,
step by step.
Yeah, so we're not too familiar with how it works.
Get a
because
Col Academy going, mate.
we
Get
haven't
cooking.
had one, but I mean, like you're saying, it does feel like it's developing the next generation of talent to potentially pick up
And
for the
nurturing
team,
them,
or to like maybe you get buyouts.
So-
for
I
them,
think it's really
them
cool
and
when you
ship them off and get to the next generation.
when you
If you're
can
not
replicate
happy
the culture you have in your team to the other divisions as well. I think Mouse did a good job at that.
Yes.
I mean, they really
That's
connected.
actually the best example.
Yeah, it's the best example. They had everything really connected. The way they worked in the main team, they got that to the academy team as well. And then when they had to move up players, they would be more ready to deal with the pressure and the way they would work. I think that's a cool way of doing things. But like he said, I think these days the academy projects, they work like let's get someone from the market before others do, and then maybe if he's really a good player, we can use him. And it's good to have the kind of cultural thing to the academy team, so you can get players ready for your own project.
To add on to that, I think like the academy projects almost kind of replace the 6-7 man rosters in a way, right? Like that kind of like, picks
That's
up
the pivot,
after because it's like when they started limiting that and you couldn't do the 6-7 man rosters anymore, which I think could have been good if we were allowed to like explore that more. Just creating a good environment where everyone's always like, because that's one of the things that I feel like is probably the worst thing that we have in esports. It's so hard to just replace a person one for one, so it's like no one ever really feels like there isn't that job security or something, because who are you going to replace me with? Like, what are you going to do? If I show up with a bad attitude tomorrow, it's like, like, I'm not saying this happens, but it's like what are you going to do? Right? So you don't have that person. You can't just get benched. It's like, oh, sorry, you're not playing this weekend.
But that's where I'd ask, is they're not like, I don't know how deep the rabbit hole has gone yet in Counter-Strike with data. And like, I see some of the crazy, some people will do like really interesting like HLTV filters, and they'll be able to say, like ZywOo's had 2 bad games, 2 games under 1.0 in his career or something crazy that I was like, 2 games, that just doesn't he's been here a while now. And like data can get you some interesting points. But like, how deep has it gone down the rabbit hole where, for example, when you talk about replacing a player, I'm sure there's someone cooking something where I could go, hello, Mr. AI, if I was replacing Nico in G2, I don't know, who would have the best positions to cover it, and it could go and have a look at who plays where, but that's not the same.
Yeah, because it's also like, even though you play the same position, like people play those roles differently on different teams. You need to know different util, like there's so many different aspects. You need to know with what timings you're expected to hit, like all of these things, right? The main point I was trying to get to is like, it's also not just about the bad thing, but also pushing players to be their best, right? If you when you add these 6 or 7 man rosters, because you could push the other people to be like, hey, like I'm playing for my spot on the team, kind of, right? So you every day is like showing up, being your best, like being your best to be in your best form possible, because hey, there is someone else who could potentially like.
I see.
In Brazil, we say it's like having a shadow. In football, we say that. Have a shadow. You need to be smart. You need to do your things right.
I think it keeps people kind of honest and keeps you focused. I can imagine.
About the stats, I think the HLTV they launched the new stat system where you can see like the opening and the firepower and things like that. You can like compare the style of the players. I imagine in the future people could use that the way you were saying. I need a player with a good opening, let's say Nico stats, and of course you're not going to find Nico anywhere, but you can find someone with like the same style.
It's that easy, right? You just pull up HLTV, like,
you can see the numbers. This guy has potential to, or he plays the same style, or he can approach the roles the same way. I think that can be interesting, and data is evolving, it's getting better, and I know there are some teams that are really. They rely a lot on data. It's not our case, and we'd like to do some stuff, but not to that level. But I think in the future that's going to be very present.
In the end, there's always that human factor, right? That feeling you have to have, and like there is data, but it's not everything, right? In the end, right? So there's a lot more into that. That's when
especially because we were talking about personality and being part of the team culture and everything. That's biggest factor that we have, and it's a lot bigger than the numbers.
Yeah, like you're saying, that's something that the data doesn't pick up, right? Like you don't. Sometimes you think it makes sense to replace a person statistically, but it's easy to forget about the little things that they do and contribute to the team, like whether it's the energy that they bring. Maybe it's the dead comms, like in post plants and things like this, or like reminding people certain things in freeze time. You know, like there could be all these little things that the stats don't take into account, like you're saying, and then you replace that person, and then like. What's missing?
Why is the vibe wrong?
Why why are we not saying these things anymore? You know, right? So it's easy to neglect those little things.
There's no communication stats yet.
Exactly.
Or
like
confidence.
That would be interesting, right? Like I know there were some people working on it. I don't think it's really become yet. But if you actually had something that could interpret the communication, like amount of words from certain players, but also you need to make it actionable, right? Like whether it's commands, whether there's responses to the commands.
Make that available.
That's too much cooking.
Exactly. So I mean, like it would be so hard to track the communication and whether it's like effective.
You just upload your entire brain, and your brain passes an opinion if they're painting a good picture. That's
exactly.
There you go.
For that we normally ask people if we're trying to scout a player, we just ask someone who played with him and hey, how's that guy comms?
How's his comms?
This is completely that's how we do it these days.
But then sometimes you also have someone who's like doesn't have a good perception of what good comms are because maybe they haven't been in like a good team where
they grew up in the
exactly
face it, right?
Exactly. It's like he
People
speaks.
don't talk, right?
So it's like basically as long as he speaks, he's got good comms.
He speaks face it. It's fine. He speaks face it.
But that's where also the development comes in, right? Where you can teach people like important things that should be communicated. Like you should be saying this, you should be trying to read what's happening here or whatever. So I guess that's where the development part also comes in. And some people learn and move on, and some people don't cut it. I guess that's the sad part of the industry that we also have to deal with. Like you also some people just don't cut it. That's competitive sports at the end of the day, right? Like you also have to deal with that.
Yeah, well, this high-flying competitive lifestyle has brought us to Brazil. I appreciate the time we've spent together. Let me touch your hands with mine.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, boys.
Yeah, thank you.
That's coaching chat, or whatever we're calling this. Coach chat. You're watching Coach Chat.